guys, it's Stephanie with So Make It. Welcome to my channel. Today I'm recording a video series on how I put together a bag with no pattern. While I was filming this video series, I was making two bags, so you may see two different fabrics. For the sake of time, I'm just going to include one shot for each step. You will see the cutting instructions on the screen, and I will include that in the video description below. This is a bag that I had already made. It has a front pocket with a magnetic snap. It has a top zipper pocket. It has a Welt zipper pocket in the interior. And it has 12 credit card slots that also form a slip pocket. So if you'd like to make something like this, stay tuned. I'll show you all the steps. I've got everything all cut out and interfacing applied to most pieces that I need to have interfacing on. I use the Pelon 809 and I've applied interfacing to the exteriors, to the lining, to the exterior pocket and the exterior pocket flaps. I also applied the interfacing to the fabric that will form the credit card slots. This is the fabric for the credit card slot. You'll notice that the interfacing doesn't go all the way to each edge. This is intentional. There's a lot of folds for the credit card slots and that gets really bulky. So I put about a 7-inch strip of interfacing down the center, leaving about ½ inch on each side. Starting from the top edge of the fabric, I'm going to make a line that's 2½ inches from the top. From that line, I'm going to measure down 1 3/4 inch, and then I'm going to measure down from that line 2 1/4 inch. And then I'm going to alternate the 1 3/4 inch and 2 1/4 inch measurements. The 2½ inch measurement is only from the very top. The rest of the time I'm just alternating 1 3/4 and 2 1/4. And I'm going to end up with the last line being a 1 3/4 inch measurement. The original size of fabric is 8 by 17. I do cut it a little long to trim down later. In case my folds get a little off, I'll have a little room to work with. In order to have 12 credit card slots in the bag, I do repeat this for 2 pieces of 8 by 17 fabric. Now that all the pieces are marked, you can kind of see on the right side of fabric, you can kind of see the lines that I made from the interfacing side. And those are the lines that I'm going to fold on. My first fold is going to be from the top, and I'm going to fold down with the right sides of fabric facing. And then I'll fold back on the next line, and then I'll fold forward on the following line. Just an accordion style fold until I folded all the lines. And it's going to make 3 pockets. Once I have both pieces for each bag folded, I'm going to press them just to make sure it's a nice crisp fold. And then I'll take it to the sewing machine and top stitch. Now that I have the fold pressed in, I'm just going to top stitch using a 3.0 stitch length and about an 1/8 inch seam allowance. I'm just top stitching across the top of each pocket. So as I finish one, I'll take and just fold the other one out of the way so I'm not sewing through it, and I'll continue this for all three pockets on both pieces of fabric that I have for each bag. I'm going to take 2 of the credit card slots I'm going to put them right sides together. Both of these pieces will have the credit card slots facing up. I'm going to line them up from side to side and at the top, and I'm going to sew with a 1/4 of an inch seam allowance. Now that I have the credit card slots sewn together, I am just going to mark a line down the center on both sides. I know the fabric is 8 inches wide, so I'm just going to make a dot, a couple of dots at the 4-inch mark, and this is going to divide the credit card slots. Once I have my marks made, I'll just sew down this line across each side. I'll start at the bottom about where the fold is. You can fill the fold under the fabric, or you can flip it up and mark it. And I'll sew along that line, and I'll backstitch a few times over the top of each pocket. And I'll do that for both sides. As I'm sewing here, I just started at the bottom, and I started where that fold is. You can fill through the fabric where the bottom fold is. You'll need to sew from there to the top. I'll just repeat the same process for both sides of each credit card slot panel that I'm making. And this is where I was talking about earlier that I would trim the bottom of that credit card slot down. I want my finished credit card slots to be 8 by 4 3/4. I know they're 8 inches wide, so I'm not bothering that, but I am going to, while it's folded right sides together, I am going to cut this at 5 inches. So it's going to be 8 by 5. And then I'll sew across the bottom with a 1/4 of an inch seam allowance, and that'll give me a finished size of 8 by 4 3/4. Now I'm just sewing across with that 1/4 of an inch seam allowance to close off the bottom of the credit card slots. Now they're all sewn together. We have kind of like a tube. The side edges are open. I'm just flipping the right side out, and I'll just get it to lay flat. And now that I've almost got it turned out, I'm just going to kind of press everything flat. I'm going to finger press it, and then I'll just take it to the iron and make sure everything is laying nice and flat. Now I'm just top stitching with about 1/8 of an inch seam allowance across the very top of the credit card slot. And now I'm ready to put the sides or the wings onto the edge of the credit card slots. This is going to do two things. It's going to close off those raw edges, and it's going to extend the credit card slots to be the same length as our bag. I have pressed the top portion down like 1/4 of an inch, and I'm just going to line that along the top and the sides, and I'm putting one on the front and the back of the credit card slots. So I'm going to get everything lined up, pop a couple clips in. Now I'm just folding that bottom edge up to line up with the bottom of the credit card slots. And I'm going to do that for both pieces, front and back. And then here I'm just going to put a pin through this, and then I'm going to just press that crease in so it lays nice and flat. And I am going to do this for both sides. That'll close off both of the side raw edges and make that a nice panel for the credit card slot pocket and the slip pocket that it's going to form. Now that I have that bottom crease pressed in, I'm just going to take the pins out and pop a clip at the bottom. This will hold the fabric in place while I sew along the sides, and I won't have to worry about removing the pins as I sew. So I'm just going to sew with 1/4 of an inch seam allowance, and I'm going to do that along both edges to get those wings attached. Now we have the credit card panel done, and we're ready to attach it to the bag. I am going to go ahead and trim the loose threads. I'm just checking to make sure that my seams are good. I didn't have any skip stitches or anything like that. I would just press the wings down, and I'll be ready to place it in the bag. Now I've got my lining panel. The lining panel is 8 by 11, and I'm going to mark a line to sew the credit card slot onto. It is going to be 2 inches from the bottom, so I'm just making a few dots to measure the 2-inch mark, and then I'm just going to draw a line straight across. I'm just using chalk, so it'll go away easily later. Now I'm just going to use the line that I've drawn to line up the credit card slot panel. Just going to line it up across that line, and I'm going to put a couple of pins in to hold it in place, and then also across the bottom of the panel. I'm just sewing across the bottom of the credit card slot panel. I am back stitching beginning and end, using about between 1/4 of an and 1/8 of an inch seam allowance. And now I'm just going to close off the wings. I am just going to sew around the wing from the top all the way to the bottom. I am going to back stitch at the top a couple of times just to secure it, because this is going to form that slip pocket. And the reason that I do want to sew all the way around that wing is if I don't, that's going to leave an opening, and things that you put in the slip pocket will get caught up in the lining of the bag and lost. So I'm just going to close that off. It's going to secure the slip pocket and make sure that nothing gets caught in the lining, or nothing gets lost in the lining. So I'm just repeating it for the other side, just closing off the top. I'm attaching the wings together too. They had been separate prior. And then all the way down the side of that, just back stitching at the top of the pocket a few times just to secure it, and back stitching at the bottom as well. And now that the credit card slot panel and slip pocket panel is completed, please stay tuned for the next video to see the Welt zipper pocket panel. Like and subscribe. Thanks.